and then it was clear that some kind of European collaboration really was needed also in that case, and how collaboration can in fact help us go forward and develop something new even in harder times. So the strategic goals Europe obviously has quite a few of them, but one of them really is the development of joint innovative formats for international education and mobility, and to implement pilots that are supporting this strategic goal. And one of the pilots is the micro qualification, like we are currently calling it, in sustainability. And it is really meant for, as all micro credentials are, for to match some of the new labor market demands and needs for flexible ways of upskilling. And this one is particularly meant for people with an existing bachelor's degree in any field. Let's say not in sustainability, but in any other field. And the reasoning behind that is that the labor market, if we're speaking of a labor market outside of academia or even within academia, we need more and more in any kind of position you will need in any kind of role, understanding about sustainability, how to apply to know about sustainability and how to apply that knowledge into your specific field. So this is what this Una-Europa package wishes to offer different kinds of learners and really develop their knowledge and methodologies, understanding of methodologies and skills in methodologies of sustainable development. In the end, we wish to be able to offer this across the board for a very broad audience as a continuous education format, also outside of the Una-Europa collaboration, but at the pilot stage, we are taking a smaller step and only offering it to our universities, masters, and also doctoral level students. The idea behind the micro qualification is that it has a common core course of Introduction to Sustainability of five ECTS credits, and then in addition, the learners are expected to take 3 other courses under these 3 pillars. So it's altogether 4 courses and 20 ECTS if that will give you the eligibility for the micro-credential in the end. The pillars are, as you can see, based on the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have an economic, environmental, and social pillar. And the idea in the end, when we develop this further, is to have more than 1 course available under each of these pillars. So they're pillars with baskets. But at the moment, we are developing, in addition to the core course, we are developing 1 course per each pillar. So they are new courses that we are putting together. But also in the end, we can offer existing courses under this micro, as part of this micro qualification, as long as they fit into the learning objectives that are being developed for this particular offering. And the courses, they are being developed and offered by different partner universities. So one partner university has responsibility always for 1 course. But there is a working group for the whole micro-credential that meets and discusses, for example, the learning objectives, how the pedagogical solutions that we come up, and makes sure that the courses are fit well together. Let's put it that way. And they may also offer support for each other across these courses. So even if it's developed by 1 university and offered by 1 university, there is the collaboration element also at the course level, but definitely on the level of the whole micro qualification. And mobility is obviously an important part of the European universities. And for the micro qualification, it's really a question of virtual mobility, both for students and staff. And obviously, just taking a Mooc will not be it's not a form of mobility to just study a Mooc on your own. So the way that the courses are being built is that they have an open Mooc part that will be really available for anybody also outside of this collaboration to study at their own pace. But then in order to actually acquire the credits and gain the micro-credential at the end, learners need to enroll for the scheduled sessions in addition to the Moocs. And there they will be able to collaborate and interact with their peers, the other students, as well as the teacher and potentially also teachers from different universities. So there is the collaboration element built into that. And also the scheduled sessions are designed to answer to the needs of the higher level learning outcomes. In the Mooc section, there will only be multiple choice tests, but in the scheduled sessions, there will also be a project part where the learners will interact with each other. So how do we do this in practice with between 8 universities? Una-Europa has developed this collaboration, kind of a project team approach to all of the pilots. So not just the micro-credential, but all of the pilots that we are doing. And each pilot has a lead university. For the micro-credential, it is the University of Helsinki, as well as the lead academic, which for us is senior lecturer Laura Riuttanen. And then otherwise we have members from different universities participating. So for the academics, the courses that are now being developed, there's one by courses by Helsinki with the lead of Laura, as well as by Jagiellonian in Krakow by Maciej Kroczynski, and by Bologna, Francesco Spampionato is taking charge of each. They each have one Mooc that they are steering to forward. But then there's the academic community of Una-Europa in sustainability, the self-steering committee that also discusses and supports the academics in charge of these particular courses. But obviously, developing a micro-credential is much more than just putting together academic input, academic content. And to support the academics, we have developed the Una-Europa clusters of experts. So we have people specialized within administration professionals in these different fields: IT for education, teaching, learning, quality assurance, student administration, legal issues, and so on and so forth. And each cluster has one member from each university. So when we have an issue, let's say with registering credentials, an obvious one, then the clusters are taking care of it, that we follow either follow the rules of each of our universities, or if there is need to change something and need to make adjustments in the practices of our individual universities, those adjustments are being made. So it's a collaboration. We make sure that there is a continuous communication between the universities in specific issues with specific knowledge, but also communication always to within each of our partner universities. And to support the communication, we obviously have a joint SharePoint where we have all the documents. But for the pilots particularly, we have an issue log where we have documented all of the issues that we have recognized, and that sort of keeps updating. And we have recognized also what needs to be done, who are the clusters, who are the experts actually, whose input is needed in order for us to get that specific issue solved. And we are at the same time, from these issues, developing a document with all the elements of of the pilot, in this case the micro-credential, that in the end will then become the basis for our collaboration agreement on this specific pilot. And I have a couple of minutes left, so I would like to give you a couple of examples of the issues that we have recognized that need to be taken into account when we are doing this in European collaboration. Some of them are probably similar to regardless, even if you are doing micro-credential within just one university, but these are the issues that are specific to the European collaboration especially. So first of all, just the definition of micro-credential. We have in our case, we have 8 different universities' national systems. And for some, these types of what we could call micro-credentials, even if we haven't, but that kind of those formats are already known, and they have been around for a long time, but our universities may have been implementing in very different ways. There is a different division of labor between university and open university, for example, and so those are the issues that we need to come into agreement with. And we have developed and are developing a concept note on the micro-credential, so the Una-Europa understanding of what this type of offering would entail and should entail if we do it within our collaboration, and then go forward and share that notion. We need to share it across these different, not only with the academics, obviously, but also with the different clusters of experts. And in the end, our board of directors, who will be the body accepting and making the decision of that this is the Una-Europa approach to the micro-credentials. Quality assurance is obviously a very, very central issue, and again, different national systems where we need to have that we need to take into account, and both on the Mooc level and on the level of other, let's say, on the course level and on the level of the micro-qualification as a whole. And for the quality assurance of Mooc, or the Mooc part of the courses, not all of our universities already have something like that in place, a formalized quality assurance for that. So that is something that we need to agree on and perhaps develop also in some of our partner universities. And at the level of the micro-qualification as a whole, the University of Helsinki, as the lead university in this case, is also in charge of the quality assurance for the whole micro-credential, and we have an agreement between our within Una-Europa that it is always the quality assurance follows the procedures of the lead university. And University of Helsinki is within, we don't have an accreditation system, but we are within institutional. We have institutional audits. So in fact, we already have something that we can pretty directly apply for this quality assurance of the micro-credential. But of course, we need to also make that transparent and agree on the use of this procedure with the rest of our partner universities. And following that, also agree how the different partner universities can apply this. Now at the pilot stage, when it's only offered to the existing already enrolled students within these universities, it's also a question of whether it can be offered, whether it can be incorporated into, let's say, a master's degree, or if students from some university can only have it as a separate certificate, and how do we go about that? And these are probably some of the issues that are, excuse me, common and at least familiar to all of us, based on what the discussions that have been and the developments that have been going on. But for the collaboration, it's really, really crucial that we have the strong authentication and identification of learners in place. And we, in fact, have identified that we don't, even if we have the clusters of experts, this is one cluster of experts that we are still missing, and that we are currently looking for people to contribute from all of the partner universities on how to access not only the learning platforms, but also how to, in fact, enroll the students across different European countries for virtual mobility at a course level, so that it's not so bureaucratic or paper heavy, or it doesn't acquire manual labor. And then related to that, obviously, the transfer of credits from one university to another. So that would be the kind of more bureaucratic side, but then we have also recognized that the student input is really, really crucial already at the development stage. So what we are doing now is, in addition to having the academics and the experts, we are also inviting students across the board, across all 8 universities, to contribute to the development of this micro qualification or micro credential in a workshop that will be, in fact, held just next week. So thank you. That was what I had to say at this point.
Thank you, Maija, for your inspiring presentation, and we take note about this event. Interesting. There are already some questions written in the chat. We have Ulf that say, as Una Europa discussed the role of external quality assurance in relation to our MQ in accordance to the European thing.
We have taken it as our starting point, the discussions within, for example, now I forget the name of the more general discussions that have been going on the European level, that the external quality assurance would not be needed, at least not on the kind of programmatic level, the way that we do it for full programs, but that we really would need something more agile, let's put it that way. But of course, it's the full extent of the quality assurance that is needed is still under discussion.
Ulf, I see you online with the camera on. Do you have a follow-up question? Do you want to detail something? I don't know.
Hello, thank you very much,
no
Maija.
problem.
Very interesting. Well, I represent obviously an external quality assurance agency, hence my question. So the FINEC of Sweden. It's really interesting because we are also, of course, discussing this and participating in different working groups. What should the role of external quality assurance and external quality assurance agencies be in this? Should we have any role? And of course, it depends on the national context. If as you pointed out, or somebody pointed out, program accreditations is a heavy mission for external quality assurance, then of course it could be an issue. If quality assurance, external quality assurance is more directed towards institutional audits and institutional reviews, then it should arguably be left more to the institutions and to the alliances to cope with this, since the responsibility for quality of education lies with the universities themselves. So that's why, and that's an interesting. I think we have an important part to play, though, in the external quality assurance agencies to discuss the questions and to work towards sort of relieving the obstacles and the burdens from institutions and from alliances. So that's how we see it. Thank
yes,
you.
and I should maybe add that in Finland, what we have is, in addition to the institutional approach, the idea is that because we already do this kind of quality assurance for our what we call study modules. So you can, even at the moment, you can take 25 ECTS or even 40 ECTS of studies, worth of studies in our open universities, and get credits for that. And they are included in one of our degree programs. So the quality assurance for the study modules is being carried out within as part of the degree programs. So in that sense, we don't see it as too different from what we already have. But then again, this collaboration brings into it a different level. So, for example, ONA Europa does have a quality assurance board. In addition to the professionals, we also have a quality assurance board. So that's obviously involving, for example, them would be one midway option on top of the institutional quality assurance.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also a question from Manuela. Yeah, will the sustainability credits and certification be recognized by the corporate world? Did you also have these stakeholders in your board in Europa?
Yes, we do have. We have an external advisory board, but for the moment, these courses, they haven't yet been developed with external stakeholders. But we definitely see that also as a future development. And what we are doing on another front is development of continuous learning certificates, which in the end could also be developed into microcredentials. And there we do have the contribution of external stakeholders and industry in the development of those.
A related question is from Sabine that says, does your microcredential may be part of a regular initial learning curriculum?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what we actually have at the University of Helsinki, for example. It will be part of our master's degree in atmospheric science.
Okay, we also have a question from Julian. Will the participating university implement study and examination regulations for each microcredential, or are they somehow integrated into the existing general study regulations?
That is actually an excellent question. We need to add it into our issue log, so thank you. And I think somebody was asking if the concept note will be available. It will be available. Yeah. It's not. It's currently still under development, but once it's ready to be published, it will be published.
That's good to know. Yeah, this is just a comment. Any other person that want to ask something? This is the time. Otherwise, we pass to the next speaker. I give you once more the chance, but no. So thank you very much, Maya. Very much appreciated your presentation. We are waiting for Matt to join, but I don't see him yet in the presentation, in the audience. Stefan, can you confirm if you? And I don't, probably would have spoken, but
no, I don't see him yet, but if the time zone is a problem, he might arrive at 3.
He might arrive at 3, indeed.
2 o'clock, so let's see.
Okay, so I would say we pass to the next presenter, which I already anticipated is a video with Dr. Francisco Iniesta from the Open University. So I'm gonna share his video presentation. Yeah, give me a second. And sorry, it's taking a bit longer than expected. Yeah, here I am. Yeah, I think you see it, huh? You see black, all black. I will start the video. Okay. So Francisco has a presentation on the model guideline for assessment and recognition of microcredential developed in the frame of our project. Say our because it's coordinated by EADTU, that is called Msclm. That means European Mooc Consortium for the Labor Market. So I go to the minutes 8. Because the introduction by coincidence was pretty much part of the presentation of George yesterday, and I go directly to the point. Sorry a second, I have to find the right time. And it's not allowing me. Okay, this is it. So let me know if you hear it well.
Microcredentials are designed to be standalone or to form part of a larger award. Some microcredentials are expected to be awarded by a body with the powers to award academic credit. They are subject to proportionate quality assurance mechanisms and are mapped against the European Qualification Framework or the equivalent levels in the university's national qualification framework. Therefore, to produce models and guidelines, research in quality assurance is relevant because in microcredentials academic credit is being awarded. For that purpose, current quality guidelines in Moocs and microcredentials have been reviewed. The quality of the design and the production for courses is an issue of relevance. For example, Moocs cannot remove all barriers to learning, but can contribute to ensuring quality education for all. In the same line of argumentation, we need to consider the lack of quality in Moocs to offer formal pathways to recognize academic qualifications and the inequality to access that provides. Therefore, 9 previous and ongoing initiatives have been identified with considered models and guidelines for Mooc and microcredential quality, including aspects related to assessment and recognition. These are the Mooc Quality Project, the Mooc Quality Reference Framework, OpenAPD Quality Label, which includes projects such as SCORE 2020 and BitMooc, Moonlit, Microball and Micro Higher Education, the OEPAS and ECOE, ESLPS, Quality Scorecard, Criteria for Excellence in Moocs, and finally, the ADX Mooc Development Checklist. Dimensions identified in the desk review conducted showcase in the table that they are differently addressed, which is normal considering many of those were designed for Moocs, which do not necessarily need summative assessment, and formal and transferable accreditation. In that sense, none of the models and guidelines identified considers ID verification. The dimensions in the guidelines are as identified for the search of quality models and guidelines. Therefore, fulfills the common microcredential framework microcredential definition. That means, is it really a microcredential? Is it a course? What about the study time and workload? As well, the other dimension is assessment and recognition. ID verification, assessment, accreditation and recognition, and the quality assurance framework. The adaptation of the OpenAPD benchmark has been chosen as the baseline structure for the models and guidelines for assessment and recognition design. There are several aspects to consider when using the OpenAPD label. Every platform provider has quality criteria for the Moocs to be designed against. The checklist is not designed to be used by experts. It's oriented towards self-assessment. Providers are expected to reflect on their Mooc production to provide the first measure of the strengths of performance and areas for improvement. Therefore, the framework adapted has 3 structural levels. As we can see, checklists, each of the main areas to evaluate, dimensions, the different key aspects for each area, and criteria, of the different criteria to cover a dimension. The chosen rating method for each of the criteria is not achieved, the feature test is missing, partially achieved, the feature to test is available but not integrated, largely achieved, the feature to test is available and partially integrated, and fully achieved, the feature to test is available and fully integrated. If the criterion is not applicable, none of the previous options is selected. In this case, comments should be added. The table summarizes the checklist guidelines and number of criteria for models and guidelines for assessment and recognition, following a SCORE 2020 and BitMooc structure. We are now going to introduce the guidelines with their dimensions and criteria. There are 3 criteria for the microcredential definition. Microcredentials aim for small units of study that meet the desired outcomes, lay foundations for a new qualification to address the needs of employers and learners looking for small units of study that meet their career goals and to develop higher educational level skills. Enable courses produced to the Common Microcredential Framework to be recognized toward formal qualifications, as they will be designed in accordance with recognized national qualification frameworks. Finally, to enable courses produced to the Common Microcredential Framework to be stackable between different higher education institutions in Europe and beyond to support personalization of learning. In terms of the course, there are three criteria. The course is designed by the Common Microcredential Framework as a plan of study which includes a summative assessment created and evaluated by a nationally recognized university under its National Quality Assurance Framework. The course content is aimed at employees and should be combined with a mix of theory and practice to ensure it has direct relevance to the workplace. According to the Common Microcredential Framework, a microcredential should award a transcript that sets out the course content, learning outcomes, total study hours, UQF level, and number of credits points, ECTS, earned. It should be designed for those studying at university level, anywhere from first year undergraduate to doctoral. In terms of assessment and recognition, ID verification has two criteria. The Common Microcredential Framework specifies that the course should deploy a reliable method of ID verification at the point of the summative assessment. This should comply with the provider's policies and be a method that is widely adopted across platforms. We define three levels depending on their reliability: basic, good, and better. Methods marked as basic should be accompanied by another method marked as good or better to grant verification. The following ID verification methods are recommended for microcredentials. Platform ID verification is basic. Match learner's own photo via selfie or a webcam with an ID. Provider registration is basic. Learners complete a registration process with the provider. Interviews, which can be basic, on-site oral interview, an interview at the provider's premises, and good, an online interview, a short online interview to verify student identity and work. Recorded presentations are better, so recording a presentation as part of the capstone project. As reported in the Mooc project, it's important to consider the accessibility and be compliant with WCAG accessibility guidelines according to the European Commission. In terms of assessment, there are three criteria, and the Common Microcredential Framework indicates a microcredential must employ a rigorous summative assessment method that allows the award of academic credit. So therefore, this credit can be achieved either directly following successful completion of the course or via recognition of prior learning upon enrollment as a student on the provider's course of study. We identified several types of assessment and their combinations. The following type of assessment are recommended for microcredentials, although all, as noted, have some limitations. Computer-graded assessment. This could take a form of a final exam or quizzes based on the case studies or projects. Teacher grade assessment. So teachers grade assessment are often associated with the size and capstone projects. Multi-type assessment, mixture of computer grade assessment and teacher grade assessment. Finally, assessment types should as well consider their accessibility as indicated in the Mooc project. In terms of accreditation and recognition, we got four criteria. The Common Microcredential Framework suggests the course should provide a transcript that sets out the course content, learning outcomes, total study hours, UQF level, and number of credit points that are earned. In addition, a credible industry backer for a microcredential might endorse its relevance for employment purposes. Endorsement is not always necessary, especially if the university's brand or the core subject would not benefit from a non-university endorsement. We have identified several methods for recognition. Academic credit, offering transferable academic credits, which is flexible and offers convenience for students. They can be done by awarding ECTS or by making agreements with universities that they will accept these credits. That means transferable. Professional credit, awarding professional credit hours or credits from formal professional accreditation bodies, which is formal. And the professional certificate, which is backed by a business leader to enhance its credibility and offer more work relevance. That means endorsement. Or can be combined, offering academic and professional credits in the same program. This offers more opportunities to learners than offering only one form of credit. Projects such as Microball or MicroHE project, they have identified microcredentials that should be awarded in a digital and signed format. For example, the identified Europass digital credentials, EDC, as well as the need to have a strategy that addresses recognitions of microcredentials. Projects such as OEPass and ECOE indicate the transcript should be issued in a widely spoken language or an easy-to-read graphical format, in a standardized forms according to standardized processes. In terms of quality assurance, we have two criteria. The Common Microcredential Framework suggested that ENQA guidelines should be reference framework used. Every microcredential must be associated with the award of credit, either directly or via recognition of prior learning. In that regard, the quality is assured by providers confirming that the microcredential passes the provider's standard quality assurance processes. Providers are responsible for ensuring that their internal quality assurance mechanism follows strict internal quality criteria and procedures, in line with national quality standards, creating a guarantee for quality. Some conclusions include that this framework maps the elements for assessment and recognition, allowing Mooc platforms, universities, and employment services to place microcredentials and similar courses in context. We need to consider that the framework can form the basis for assessment and recognition between Mooc platforms in Europe. The two checklists provided can be used to check two different contexts, so that the course is a microcredential according to a common microcredential framework, and that it is following current best practices for assessment and recognition. The checklists, therefore, are designed to be used at the planning and design stages of microcredentials to allow check if the best assessment and recognition approaches are in place, allowing a reflective process more than evaluation at the end. You might like to consider having a look to the Msclm outputs. So far, the state-of-the-art analysis of Mooc provisions for the labor market, the Mooc and online learning opportunities for the labor market, the compendium on good practices in assessment and recognition of Moocs, which is based off these guidelines, and the models and guidelines for assessment and recognition of Moocs and microcredentials, where you will be able to find all the information in the presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention, and you can find a list of useful references that have been used during this presentation.
So we are back. Do you hear me? Unfortunately, Francisco is not online to get your question, but if you have any, the EDTU team can try to answer. So feel free to type your question or just talk to us. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna post here the link that also Francisco shared about the Msclm result, because probably would be easier to read the document later on. So if somebody type, please, Stefan, read the question, because I don't see it.
Perhaps I can make a remark or a consideration.
Please, Peter, go ahead.
If you want. If you want. Well, I think this is interesting work, although it was very fast, the presentation. But at the end, I think we broadly agree on core elements for the recognition, also for the assessment of microcredentials, and that's very important. If we want really a recognition of microcredentials in the framework of the European higher education area and the Bologna process, we must know on which criteria this recognition is based. And briefly, I think Francisco said, okay, it's important to know because everything is online sometimes, if the ID verification was all right, if there is a reliable method of identification of students, if there was a summative assessment at the end of the microcredential at the end of the course, or at least an assessment about the entire course. That's very important. And that assessment can be, of course, computer graded or teacher graded. That I think also everybody agrees on that. Interesting was, I think, in terms of accreditation and recognition, and that on top of academic accreditation, there might be for microcredentials also a kind of professional endorsement or a professional accreditation, especially for some professions like psychology or medicine or many other fields. It's not specifically for these fields, it's for all study fields, I think. And also, there should be a kind of reliable or valid quality assurance, which can be internal quality assurance or internal quality assurance, which then is accredited by an external quality assurance agency. That's one way forward. We don't like so much, I think, an external quality assurance mechanism for each microcredential. That would be too much work as well. And that would slow down actually the delivery of courses to meet urgent economic needs. Perhaps if quality assurance externally should be done, it's preferably ex post instead of ex ante. That's the general statement we have. So it's a nice contribution to the recognition of costs, but I would want to add something. There is also an interesting study of NUFIC about the recognition of microcredentials going on. Is based on the Practitioner's Guide for Recognition of E-Learning. And they use also more or less the same parameters. And that's interesting because that shows broader agreement. And they speak about the quality of the course, the verification of the certificate, the level of the course, that means the qualification level, the learning, the description of the learning outcomes, the workload of the course, the way in the results are tested, and also the identification of the participant. Perhaps Bas Wegewijs, who is here as well in the audience, might comment on this. But as a result, as a conclusion, I wanted to say that there is, we see now a growing agreement between experts on what the recognition of microcredentials might mean, and also how they should be described in the certificate supplement when they deliver a certificate.
Thank you, Pete. We have Ulf that is making a question. I invite him to speak up. Thank you. Yeah, I see you turn on the camera, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Trying to be active here, always on the quality assurance issues, of course. My question was about student participation and influence in the production and provision of MCs. Of course, it will Open University, I suppose, even if they produce everything themselves, so they can actually include this. But if we think of microcredentials being picked up by higher education institutions, but from providers that are not higher education institutions, that becomes an issue in my view, because in line with European standards and guidelines and how we think about things, students should take an important part in the planning, production, implementation, well, in all stages actually of education. So that's my question, and maybe it's not a direct question to the Open University, but it could be a question for anybody on the panel.
Yeah,
sure.
I think in these projects we didn't have the particular scope of Open University solely. It's more a general view, and in general also when we developed together with the European Mooc Consortium the Common Microcredential Framework, we thought that there were two ways of recognizing microcredentials. It's the first way is indeed via the normal quality assurance systems of higher education, and it is formal education. From the moment that it is non-formal education or coming from providers which are outside the formal circuit, then you need other parameters, and then universities, because we have mainly spoken, and here we certainly spoke only about the recognition by higher education institutions. Then you use the procedures for recognition of prior learning. And I think that these are also the two tracks which were actually suggested by NUFIC and their reports.
Thank you.
So
Happy.
Yeah.
We have another question from Jade. Please, if you feel to actually say your question, then I don't read it. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Jade from University of Geneva. Yes, I think Wolf, you have asked a very good question, because the students from the Open University of UK, they are not necessarily the same as, for example, the students from University of Geneva, other universities, except for the continuing education. So how you balance that, as Piet, you just said, formal education and the continuing education for the professionals. So I think it's a very it's kind of an elementary issue, because we should be clear about what our target students for these micro-credentials. It seems that we are confusing these two. I mean, micro-credentials are supposed, if I understand well, supposed to design for students from the continuing education area. But now what I see and what I hear today is that we try to integrate micro-credentials in the formal education. So we know that some skills, for example, some courses cannot be integrated exactly in the formal education. For example, for bachelor students, they don't have any working experience, for example. And when you integrate that in the programs for continuing education, that will be there will be a lot of challenges. So that's why I want to see how you think about this question. Thank you.
I think micro-credentials have a double scope. When we discussed in EDTU, not only with the open universities, also with the traditional universities about micro-credentials, then always, we thought mainly about micro-credentials for continuing education, but always, for these micro-credentials, because they are delivered by higher education institutions, they should be also at the same time academic, have an academic profile, but also a professional profile. So both of the profiles should be there, and therefore also higher education institutions are enabled to award credits, ECTS credits, for these micro-credentials. Of course, that balance between academic and professional can be very different, and of course, and micro-credentials can be developed just for a standalone courses, which then afterwards can be recognized by bachelor or master programs. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that they immediately are developed, bearing in mind that they are stackable to a bachelor or a master program. There are different ways to universities have different ways to look into micro-credentials and how they meet the needs of people and what they can deliver as academic institutions in combination with that professional orientation, and perhaps also in combination with the collaboration with the labor market directly in the form of co-creation of courses. All this is possible, but in general, in the current discussions, we see that academic dimension also perhaps guarantees one or another stackability, or a stackability to one or another program deliberately. But we can also understand that some universities develop a micro-credential just for continuing education, not thinking immediately about a stackability to a program. That's also possible. Yeah, and so there are different types of learners. Some learners have in their mind, perhaps after taking a micro-credential, to continue their studies with other micro-credentials and evolving to a short program or a degree program. but other learners can have just the intention to follow one microcredential to develop just particular competences and stop there and take a completely different microcredential afterwards in line with their career development. So that can be, yeah, very, very different. And perhaps we have to allow in continuing education a variety of models of how to approach the design of microcredentials. That can be, bearing in mind that there is a stackability to one or more programs, or it can also be just a microcredential focusing on one competence.
Pete, we have two other people wanted to talk, so let's give space to them. Anka, please, can you go ahead?
Thank you. I just wanted to say if George wants to come in response to Pete, I'm happy to allow that because mine is not directly related.
Yeah, thanks. Indeed, it has to do with the comments from Jade and Pete. Indeed, summarizing, we are focusing on microcredentials for higher education with the possibility of having also recognition of prior learning for those who are not programs or learning units that are not immediately rewarded with credits. But it doesn't mean that for professional education that there is no way of having microcredentials, but they will coexist. So there will be there will be coexistence of different microcredentials at some point. Our microcredential, called microcredential framework, specifically focuses on academic education. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, George.
Is it okay now, Alessandra? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the floor. I just wanted to come in. I represent what would be the external quality assurance community. So the discussions that we are having today are extremely interesting. I thought it's maybe good for me to kind of pitch in as Ulf was taking the floor from our point of view. Just to note that the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, so ENQA, has set up a working group of 19 agencies that are currently working on exploring, I would say, I would use the word exploring just for now, what are the implications for the European standards and guidelines in terms of microcredentials. Obviously, ENQA is preoccupied with higher education particularly, but of course we realize that microcredentials interlink and through the capacity of articulation with higher education programs would immediately have some form of impact for the work that ENQA is taking forward. Now, I think Ulf very rightly said that it's a case of very different national contexts, very different regulatory regimes that we are currently looking at. And of course, all the burdens, let's say, that you have been pointing out in relation to quality assurance and external quality assurance. And I think Pete very nicely summarized the fact that there needs to be agility with microcredentials, and sometimes external quality assurance simply slows down that potential for agility. These are all being looked into as part of this working group. And I'm pleased to announce, though yet there's still a lot of work to be done, that we are hoping to have a fully fledged position by the end of next year. So hopefully that position can also inform European Commission initiatives in relation to this particular perspective. Currently, there is very little, let's say, that we can share, and nothing in the public domain, I'm afraid. But we will, we've conducted a survey amongst members just now, which will be extended much more broadly to other external quality assurance agencies and that's probably something that eventually will become of interest to the community of colleagues looking into microcredentials. So just wanted to let's say, put a mark down and say that there is work coming out which will hopefully boost interest from your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Anka. We really look forward to that. Please also share with us. You have our details. Happy to know about it. I would like to welcome our next presenter,